Good morning, everybody. I want to thank you for being here. Last week, Governor Shapiro laid out his vision for Pennsylvania's energy future. What he laid out was a mixed bag of half measures that will ultimately continue the pattern of increasing energy costs and taxes on Pennsylvania businesses and families. His plan may be seen as very clever, but to those who actually understand energy policy and work in this world, it is really too clever by half. Here is what it does not provide, and this is very important: real and substantial energy savings to Pennsylvanians. It does not provide a focus on grid reliability that ensures that we can keep our lights turned on, cooking our meals, heating our homes, and cooling our homes. It does not provide the tools or the vision to reinvigorate Pennsylvania's energy economy, to leverage our homegrown assets right here to create generational, family-sustaining jobs, growing communities, and a vibrant Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is home to some of the largest natural energy resources in the entire world. We have the ability to power Pennsylvania right here underneath our feet, and our allies across the world need that right now. If Governor Shapiro really wants to have a conversation about getting stuff done and no longer losing out to Ohio and West Virginia, we are ready to have a conversation about how we can leverage our energy resources here in Pennsylvania to be a more competitive state. In fact, one of the cornerstones of our Keystone Commitment that we laid out earlier this year is to create a thriving economy by doing things great that we are already good at. We are good at using our energy resources. Let's be great at it. But what that conversation will not and cannot include are plans that will increase mandates on producers and consumers while increasing energy costs on Pennsylvania's families and small businesses through new and higher energy taxes. While admitting that other states should not set Pennsylvania's energy policy, Governor Shapiro is speaking out both sides of his mouth while he simultaneously keeps us in RGGI, or the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, without condition. The idea of diversification sounds good, and it would help with the costs associated to homeowners, and it would help with reliability. However, the governor's version of diversification is simply into higher cost energy products, which would simply raise the bills. As part of his announcement, Governor Shapiro encouraged Republicans opposed to his plan to bring their own ideas to the table. And we, as a caucus, are up to that challenge. House Republicans have been leaders for more than a decade right here in Harrisburg on our state's energy policies. In the past, as many of you know, that we have laid out different ways to lower energy costs through increased production by opening up and expanding new lands to natural gas drilling, increasing the exportation of the liquefied natural gas out of Pennsylvania, and focusing on real diversification to enhance our grid reliability. While those ideas persist, in the coming weeks, we will unveil a new package of bills right here that will put Pennsylvania on a path to more abundant energy resources, directly lower costs on families and businesses, and provide a vision to reinvigorate our energy economy. We do agree with Governor Shapiro on one thing: we cannot wait to move real energy policy here in Pennsylvania. But the answer is a lot simpler than what he presented last week. It's about lowering costs, diversification to create grid reliability, and focusing on the energy jobs right here. His plan does none of those. Thank you, and now I'll introduce Whip O'Neill.
Thank you, Leader Cutler. It's becoming evident that Governor Shapiro has a real problem with saying one thing but doing another. After feigning skepticism over RGGI as Attorney General and then campaigning against the initiative in 2022, the governor is now wasting taxpayer dollars in an attempt to save this unconstitutional cap and tax program. And as failure looms, his grand strategy is now to ask the legislature to do his dirty work by enacting a brand new energy tax on Pennsylvania consumers. I find it laughable that the governor can say with a straight face that this proposal would save consumers money. The fact is that any tax on energy production will get passed along to consumers. Egregiously, this plan would even empower the Department of Environmental Protection to run the program, effectively allowing unelected bureaucrats the ability to set the new tax rate. So the governor is asking us to pass a tax increase on Pennsylvanians without even knowing what that increase is. I can say with confidence that this proposal, as written, is dead on arrival with the House Republican caucus. Let's be clear. Governor Shapiro's energy policy is nothing but a government money grab and a direct attack on job creators and workers across Pennsylvania. Simply put, the governor is proposing a tax on your utility bills. This is just another example of the failed tax and spend policies directly contributing to rising costs and out of control inflation. Once again, it seems like the governor is more interested in appealing to primary voters in California than making life better for the people right here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Even worse, Governor Shapiro is threatening to hold consumers hostage, promising to only finally drop his pursuit of the doomed legal appeals in defense of Reggie if this new tax plan is enacted. Well, forgive me if I'm skeptical of more promises from this governor. This policy is simply out of touch. As we head towards the hot summer months, the Shapiro energy tax will cause utilities to skyrocket while Pennsylvanians can least afford it. We should be working to help people save money and cut costs, not pushing new tax increases on the backs of consumers. Make no mistake, energy prices won't be the only cost of the Shapiro plan. A Pennsylvania-specific cap and tax program will only further single us out amongst our neighbors, forcing energy producers out of state and taking thousands of family-sustaining jobs in my district and across our Commonwealth with them. In his budget address, Governor Shapiro said he was tired of losing out to Ohio. Well, Governor, then stop picking other states over Pennsylvania by giving in to the radical left. Stop with the regressive policies that punish industry and force jobs out of Pennsylvania. Abandon this new destructive tax on energy and utilities, and finally drop your Reggie appeals. Let's come to the table and talk about energy policies that invest in and strengthen our economy and help consumers who are struggling with everyday costs right here in Pennsylvania. That's our call to the governor, and we will certainly not be supporting this proposal as written. Thank you. I'll be followed by Chairman Kell.
Thank you, Whip O'Neill. And as mentioned earlier, the governor has been consistently saying that he is sick of losing to Ohio. Well, let me be completely clear. The reason we are losing to Ohio is because of policies like this. It's because of regressive tax schemes that the governor is proposing today. This tax scheme that is being put forth today, this energy policy that the governor is putting forth, is bad for consumers. Consumers like my grandmother, who can't afford a 30+% increase in their energy bills. But it's also bad for our industrial consumers. In manufacturing, one of the top two costs for everybody is energy. And you wonder why there's so much manufacturing happening in places like Ohio when we have all the natural resources in Pennsylvania. The reason why is because they don't artificially inflate their energy costs. It's also true that in Ohio, you can get a permit done in a reasonable amount of time. But instead of focusing on real permitting reform in Pennsylvania, We are talking about taxing consumers more. And make no mistake, this is not a tax on generators. This is a tax on ratepayers. This is a tax on residential consumers, on our neighbors, on our parents, on our kids. This is a tax on our manufacturers. Another thing that I want to make clear, because it's going to happen here in the next couple of years, and it's going to cause another issue across the board, but these types of policies are going to lead to blackouts. It's going to happen in the summer or in the winter when we want it the least to happen, and it's going to be because of these policies. And whatever is said once these happen, and whoever ends up getting blamed, let the record reflect, and let it reflect now, that it's the energy policies of Governor Shapiro that caused this. It's the energy policies of Democrats that caused this. And that's what's going to end up happening here within the next 2 years in a state that has so much energy right beneath us. You know, Governor Shapiro said that he was for energy jobs in his campaign. I didn't realize he meant energy jobs in China, because that's the only group that's going to benefit from proposals like this. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, starting on March 28th, the Policy Committee is going to have hearings on these issues, on how energy impacts consumers. I hope that you will all listen in. Next up is Leader Cutler for questions.
Thank you, Chairman Kale. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Happy to take some questions. Yep, go ahead, Dennis.
So the governor said he wants to work with you guys, and that RGGI may not be the right thing, but doing nothing is not an option either. Do you guys have any proposal that acknowledges that maybe global warming is happening? Do you agree that global warming is happening? Is there environmental issues that you agree with that need to be addressed?
Yeah, let's take a more expansive view of actually where we've been, because I think it's important. You know, in terms of our greenhouse gas efforts, we've already hit many of the goals that Governor Wolf himself put in place. And in fact, if we were a country, we were one of the few who hit the 2020 Paris Accord goals in a time frame that was shorter than proposed. The reason we did that was because we transferred much of our energy production from coal to natural gas. So yes, we've been working in that world. We believe that clean air is necessary and air quality is important. Now, back to this proposal versus RGGI versus what we'll be coming out with. And I think this is actually equally important. You know, it can't just be a discussion about energy policy in terms of one factor. You have to look at everything. We have to look at the ability to produce. We have to look at the reliability. We need to look at the cost. And this proposal is essentially a hostage exchange. You know, we've got a bad multi-state agreement. Let's make a single agreement just with ourselves that is equally high in terms of the tax rate. That's bad policy, because we as ratepayers will all be paying that. I believe that we can responsibly develop our energy. I think that we have consistently led on that. And look, I understand in politics, it's very easy to criticize. What's hard is getting results. And the folks behind me for a very long time have produced results. We've produced legislation that drove solid energy policies that kept prices down. You can look back over the last decade, prices were consistent and air quality improved. That can continue with our plan and our leadership.
Can I respond to that as well? Yeah, we've been hearing a lot about that as well on the road with the committee and stuff. And there's something that it kind of bothers me when they say that these types of policies that the governor is pushing are good for the environment. They're not, because all they do is drive up demand for Chinese pollution. That's essentially what we're doing. We're telling our manufacturers, the cleanest manufacturers in the world, that they have to pay more, while manufacturers in China that burn coal with absolutely no regulation can keep doing it. In fact, we're going to need more of it because of policies like this. If we want to get serious about carbon emissions, we need to be manufacturing in Pennsylvania. And we're not going to be manufacturing in Pennsylvania with policies like this.
Question is, do you guys have a sense of what the governor wants, and are you willing to work toward him at all?
Well, you've kind of highlighted a consistent problem with the governor. Started, quite frankly, at the very beginning, continued through his budget address. Many of his proposals sometimes are light on details. Now, this one is a little more fleshed out than others, so I think we know where he wants to go. I can tell you that our caucus is not in favor of higher energy taxes. That's our starting point. And, I think we can, and I'll reiterate it again because it's worth mentioning. We've demonstrated leadership previously in producing energy responsibly and providing for the needs of the constituents. One of the issues, and Chairman Kale brought this up, grid reliability is very real. I was recently down, several of us were, to tour PJM, who is responsible for managing the grid. And when you look at what we're producing here already, right now we're a net exporter. That's why the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative wants us in, because they've already adopted policies that limited production in their own states. They need a producer. We have one right across the river down here in York County, where they're proposing to flood preserved farmland because of the failed energy policies in Maryland. And that's a problem, because you've got these states that mean well, but then they also say at the same time, let's not develop energy in our own area, let's have somebody else do it. And I believe that we can produce energy here. We can do it responsibly. We've consistently done it while improving air quality. That is something that the governor's current plan does not include because of what Chairman Kale pointed out. We had a pretty robust debate on the House floor regarding what happens with solar panels at the end of their useful life. What happens with wind turbines at the end of their useful life, or when they fail like they did in Texas during one of the freezes. And then you have a serious reliability problem as well as an environmental one on the longer term. Representative Rapp has been a leader in terms of cleaning up that kind of energy waste products. And I think we have to have a serious discussion what the total cost is, not what the immediate impact is, and that's the failure of his plan. Other questions?
My last question for Josh. Can you explain in layman's terms, you just mentioned the word blackout.
Yeah.
Why and how does that happen?
Well, because what we're doing right now, and PJM was actually commenting on this, as you mentioned before, is we are increasing demand for electricity, while at the same time we're pushing policies like this that decrease our ability to generate electricity. So the more people are using electricity, the less reliable the grid becomes, which in layman's terms, what that really means is one day you're going to go to turn on the lights and they're not going to come on. They're not going to come on. The lights will be out, your heat will be out, your AC will be out, and it's happening in other places because of radical Democrat environmental policies. And now we're trying to apply them here in Pennsylvania. And the same thing is going to end up happening. And it's such a shame in Pennsylvania because we have so much natural resources right here, clean natural resources. We have figured out how to reduce carbon without the government intruding in Pennsylvania. Why are we trying to step in and say, no, we need more produced energy that comes from China, not our own energy that's showing the way, not just for our region, not just for our nation, but for our globe. We can be a leader internationally in reducing carbon if we use Pennsylvania energy. Instead, what are we doing? We're begging for more Chinese-produced energy, the solar panels that are being made there in Russia and Vietnam as well.
I can just ask one more question. I know I said last question.
No, that's all right.
Since I've got this group here, any movement towards smaller nuclear moving forward? Is that something you're discussing, looking at, investigating?
It's definitely something that we're looking at. There's some local activity actually happening in Western Pennsylvania in my area, and it's still conceptual at this point in time. Whether or not it could actually work in a real way long term is yet to be seen, but I think we're hopeful, and nuclear needs to be a part of the portfolio. It's reliable, it's affordable, so long as you can get it permitted, which is very difficult to do, but it's definitely part of the conversation.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it. We'll be available for comments and questions as well afterwards.